So welcome everybody back from lunch. We are at the April meeting of the Hypnosis Education Association for April 2021, online for the second time that we have done this, and what a wonderful day we're having. And in a moment, we're going to be listening to our next presenter, who is Joseph Onesta. Joseph, I remember as another person, it seems like I've known you for quite a while now. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I met you when you were taking an online NLP training through HPTI.
Yes.
Since that time, Joseph has he's a board certified clinical hypnotist practitioner by IMDHA. And he's in the American Council of Hypnotist Examiners and the International Certification Board of Clinical Hypnotherapy, the ICBCH, and a regular feature at Hypno Thoughts. I'm not really going to read all of this right now. I hope you'll forgive me because I can't, but just full of wisdom. I just love this guy. I've shared a table with him at the Chicago Hypnosis Conference for a weekend, doing some vending and stuff there, which gave me a time to talk with him. He's always got some great stuff to share, some great wisdom. He's been a guest on the virtual chapter as well. So we just love him, and we are so grateful that he agreed to come and talk to us today about metabolic science and hypnosis. I know he's gone through some great changes that I'm sure he's going to share with you. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Joseph Onesta. Welcome, Joseph.
Hi, can you see me?
No.
Because, okay, it's telling me that it cannot start my video. So I'm not sure why that is. And gosh, that is so embarrassing. I don't know I didn't mean to sign out of video, and I'm trying to allow it to do that. So, gosh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what, Michael, you sort of, should I log out and log back in, or what
I
do you
think
think?
that probably will work. Is your camera external?
Yes,
Check the plug.
it's in and the camera's on.
Okay. Yeah. If you would, we'd really love to see you, and it should only take you a minute.
Yeah,
So
I'm so sorry. I don't know why it's doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and leave and come back.
Okay.
I'll be back in a sec.
We'll see you back.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay, so I want you to know that it is an extreme pleasure and honor to be here, because I'm not in Florida and not really part of this group, but I am so glad to share a little bit about my journey and what I've discovered over the last 2 years. I'll just tell you very briefly my story. About 15, 17 some years ago, the doctor looked at me and said, "You're diabetic, watch what you eat." He sent me to a nutritionist, and I went to the nutritionist, and the recommendations were pretty standard. What I was told was that about 60% of my calories should come from grains, whole grains, and complex carbohydrates, and that I just had to take these medications. And that was what the doctor said. He said that diabetes was a progressive and chronic condition that I would have to do my best with. And the best I could hope for was to slow it down. And if I tell you that I did everything right, I really wouldn't expect you to believe me entirely, but I was pretty good. And 2 plus years ago, despite having taken 2 medications for several years and doing what I should do, my A1C, which is like this 3-month average of blood sugar, was near 10, which is pretty drastic. It's pretty bad. And I realized that if I were going to do something about this, the doctor wanted to put me on a 3rd medication, and I wasn't ready for that prior to insulin. If I was going to do something about this, I'd have to do it on my own, and it would have to be a little drastic. In my investigations, I found a couple of books that I thought really, really helped. The first one was Lies My Doctor Told Me And please, Rocky, don't be upset with me. It's a great book to read, by the way. Lies My Doctor Told Me by Dr. Ken Berry, a family practitioner who has a YouTube channel and is a great proponent of what I actually ended up following. And then another Dr. Jason Font, excuse me, who's a kidney doctor in Canada. And he wrote a book called The Diabetes Code. And so I found these two things. I have an academic background, so I was able to actually access and read many of the studies that they quote, and I found the information credible. So long story short, and you'll learn more about what I actually did, although I will tell you that it was a little dangerous. I mean, I knew I was taking my life into my own hands because I was also taking part of my treatment into my own hands. And I was going against some pretty standard advice. And I have to admit that that was dangerous. They call, what I did, they call it biohacking, which is looking at your own system and understanding it in a better way. So within a few weeks, I was experiencing low blood sugar. So I ended up needing to reduce my medications. Within 4 months, my A1C went from near 10. I don't remember what it was. It was 9 something. It was over 9. Scared me. My A1C was 5.4, which is not even pre-diabetic. It's non-diabetic. 2 years later, and again, I'm talking about my personal experience, but 2 years later, I took an insulin resistance test and I was classified as insulin sensitive. So based on the information that I had applied to myself out of desperation, really, and the combination which made it possible, and this is where the hypnosis comes in. You see, nobody wants to do what I did happily. Lots of people are doing it, but it costs. Nobody wants to, for example, eat a low carbohydrate diet. We've been trained to do otherwise. Nobody wants to fast. I mean, for heaven's sakes, right? Nobody wants to fast, but the hypnosis makes it possible. And what it does, what hypnosis did for me, and it's really self-hypnosis, although I had a friend that I worked with and told her what I wanted. It helped me accept the change and embrace the new lifestyle. And because this conference has that new normal phrase in it, which I love and is part of the book that I wrote regarding hypnofasting, what we want to do is create a new metabolic normal, whether we're dealing with weight loss. I've lost about 100 pounds, by the way, and that was not my goal. My goal was just to get my A1C under control. I'm off medication entirely now. I haven't had medications for 2 years. I'm not diabetic anymore, and I'm insulin sensitive. And there are literally hundreds of people who are doing this. And only now, gradually, organizations and many doctors now are sort of coming on board and saying, this is an interesting thing. And so one of the things that bothered me initially as I was learning this was that the protocols that I had learned as a hypnotist to help someone lose weight, it bothered me that it worked. Those protocols that I had learned worked. And those protocols dealt mostly with eating less and exercising more. And the funny thing is when you eat less and you exercise more, 2 things happen. Number one, there is a certain amount of blame attributed to the patient or the client. Quite frankly, you're fat or you're diabetic because you eat too much and you're lazy. And that blame always sort of bothered me. It just always bothered me. But given the science that we thought was science, it was true. Calories in, calories out. but it actually puts the blame on the person. The second thing that it does is that we're perpetuating a kind of model that only can actually end up damaging someone's, damaging their metabolism. We don't see, and Dr. Fung points this out, we don't see reunion shows of The Biggest Loser because they all got fat again. They were on a restricted calorie diet, very high exercise. Nobody could sustain that for the rest of their lives. And, the thing is your body accommodates. Your body understands that if you're eating 400 or 500 calories a day, that's what it's expecting. So when you go back to 2,000 calories a day, what do? You get fat. It comes back. And so those two things really bother me. And when we're hypnotists, and what we're doing is we're doing with, portion size and motivation to exercise, we're really sort of perpetuating those two things that are indeed a problem. So the notion that what we're going to do is go on a diet and we're going to lose weight. And when we lose weight, we can then, once we reach our target weight, we can then do what we want. And I'm going to highlight do what we want as this amazing, miraculous moment where we could live free and healthy and wonderfully. The thing is what do you want? Previously I would work with my weight loss clients and they would say, I wish I were like my sister. She could eat whatever she wants. And I would say, well, maybe it's in what she wants to eat. Like maybe the difference is what she really wants to eat. And let's talk about that. But the truth is that we all we are genetically designed to be attracted to sugar. When we were evolving as a race, sugar was rare. And when it was encountered, we tucked in because we were storing up for lean times. But in the 21st century, excuse me, in the 21st century, we don't really have lean times. Not going to the grocery store, we don't have lean times. And those of us who have joined and spent a lot of money at the gym, we also know that you could spend a half an hour on an elliptical and burn 46 calories, less than the latte you got on the way to the gym. So calories in, calories out does not work. It's not about calories. And so one of the things that Jason Fung points out is that what we're really looking at in terms of metabolic disease is that we're looking at an insulin model of obesity, an insulin model of weight loss, an insulin model of diabetes. And insulin is the key. So what do we do with diabetics who are advanced? We give them insulin. And anybody who takes insulin knows that when they start taking insulin, they gain weight. And when they gain weight, this is the opposite of what we want to happen, right? Because obesity only enhances what is called insulin resistance. Insulin resistance, by the way, is basically very simply put, how when picture feeding a baby and how at a certain point the baby doesn't want to eat anymore and you put the spoon toward the baby's mouth and they go like this. And we think we have to shove that food into the baby's mouth for some reason. Oh, maybe she just doesn't like this, or maybe he, wants something else. No, maybe they're not hungry. Just maybe they're not hungry. And so insulin resistance, we have two ways of burning glucose, which is sugar in our blood. We have two ways: in our cells, in our muscles, and in our liver, it's stored as glycogen, or it then becomes fat. So if a person is obese, we know that they've been taking in food that is stimulating insulin. I don't know that we can absolutely say that they're insulin resistant. I don't know that, because there are people who are overweight who are metabolically healthy, although I don't know how to, I can't test for that. So when I'm eating food, it triggers my pancreas to create insulin to deal with the increase in blood sugar. And what Dr. Fung points out is that 3 macronutrients, there's carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Of those 3, carbohydrates create the biggest spike in insulin. Second to that, protein, and then fat. And fat encourages very little spike in insulin. And in the 1990s, I lost a lot of weight on a low-fat diet that was pretty high in carbohydrates, because that was good for me. And simultaneously, I also started experiencing all sort of digestive issues and things, but I didn't associate the two. I just didn't. I think I blame that diet, by the way. I blame my diabetes on that diet. Because I was a vegetarian for 20 years, and I'm not criticizing vegetarianism, but I was also a carbohydrate-tarian. You know what I mean? Like, I ate a lot of pasta, a lot of rice, a lot of bread, because they were vegetarian. I was living in California, vegetarian was the thing to do. Now it's vegan. Everybody wants to be a vegan. Okay, you know, it's all right. You're allowed if you want. But anyway. So the idea that I'm eating food that is causing, if my blood sugar is rising in diabetes, my blood sugar is up, the medications I'm taking, my cells are now resistant to glucose. They're insulin resistant. They're not taking it in. It's the baby going, no. And so what happens to what happens to the glucose? My pancreas wants it out. Insulin wants it out. It starts shoving it into the liver. My liver can store about a day's worth of glycogen, which is like short-term savings, about a day. And then everything that's more than that gets turned into fat. It's called, glucose. Anyway, I lost the word. It just went out of my head. But it's making fat. And so, that fat starts around my organs, fatty liver. I'm sure some of you have heard the words fatty liver. It goes around my pancreas. And I could actually be quite thin and still be metabolically ill. They call it TOFI, thin on the outside, fat on the inside, which means behind the abdominal wall, the fat is around my organs. If I stimulate less insulin, right? If I make changes in my life that stimulate less insulin, and I eat less often, we've been taught to graze. Our society has been taught to graze. If I eat less often, allowing my liver to use up the stored glycogen, use it up. It was saved, it's short-term savings, it's pocket money, use it up. And then even later, maybe don't eat for a longer time so that my liver now begins to go after the body fat and start converting that into glucose, gluconeogenesis. Now my body is taking my body fat and using it to create glucose. And later, if you've heard of the ketogenic diet, it will decide at a certain point that glucose is less efficient, and so we're going to go into ketones. And so I never in my program, because of what was happening to me, this began filtering into my practice. And I don't use the word ketogenic, only because there's so much processed food, ketogenic crap in the world that is absolutely unhealthy. It's just manufactured food, and that's part of the problem. So I'm really interested as a hypnotist in how I can facilitate a change in my clients, particularly the diabetics. And it's type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is completely different. Type 1 diabetes, the pancreas isn't functioning properly. There may be no insulin coming. I mean, they need insulin. They don't have enough. And insulin is not evil. It's important. It tells, insulin puts glucose where it needs to go. So it's our friend, and if we're eating too much or we're eating the wrong things, it can be our enemy. So in terms of what this lifestyle change, and just imagine, my own doctor, and I have to say this to you, my own doctor remained very skeptical. When I went to see him with my 5.4 A1C the first time, he looked at me and he said, well, we can see that everything is working. And I said, I haven't taken my medications in 2 months. And his eyebrows went up. I said, look, I was experiencing low blood sugar. He didn't ask me what I was doing, but I handed him, I had tested my blood 9 or 10 times a day. I was using every finger once a day because I knew I was doing something dangerous, right? And I had low blood sugar twice, that I had to eat something because, and it was the medication, obviously, lowering my blood sugar. I was taking a sulfonylurea in addition to metformin. And so, and I took control of that myself. He asked, it took 2 years. Most recently, I insisted that I have the insulin resistance test, and I came back insulin sensitive. And that was the moment he looked at me and he said, now tell me what you've done. And I was telling him all along, but he wasn't listening. I like my doctor, by the way. He listens most of the time. I mean, he does take a little bit of time, but he wasn't, it was like he didn't believe me. When he said to me, I asked him, when are you going to take the diagnosis of diabetes off my record? And he said, I don't even know that that's possible. I said, well, when would you consider it? He said, when you can eat like me. And I said, I don't know how you eat. First of all, I love my doctor. He's a young fella, I don't know how you eat. But if you mean eating huge plates of pasta and bread, I'm never going to do that again. I'm not going to say no to a piece of bread ever again. I mean, I can't say that. I don't eat very many carbohydrates anymore, and I don't want them anymore. And so, but I'm not going to eat. I don't know. I'm not diabetic now. I'm insulin sensitive, but I don't ever want to be diabetic again. And so I can live without it. I'm fine. So those two things, one is called intermittent fasting, and that means eating less frequently, not grazing, not snacking, eating less frequently. And there are numbers associated with that, and in terms of hours and things like that. And then secondarily, after we have a natural fast from the time we go to bed till the time we wake up, and that's a natural fast. We're not eating unless you're one of those night eaters. We want to extend that to a reasonable time so that we could use what we ate yesterday up. Quite frankly, that's all it is. And then after that, we're going after what we've been storing for lean times. We're just going to artificially create them. And that's intermittent fasting. And if I choose to eat food that stimulates less insulin, that has less blood sugar consequences, then my liver has more time to actually process. So as a hypnotist, as I'm working with my clients, we have to deal with a number of things. And I realize I've spent a lot of my time talking about the science of it, or the concepts behind it. So when someone comes into my office, what do they need from me? First of all, they need to learn how to change the behaviors, right? Simple behaviors, no longer snacking. And so how do I help them with that? How do I help them? And I make some promises. I make some flat out promises. Number one, the first promise I make is, you can eat until you're full, or you can eat until you're satisfied. Number one. So that we're not dealing with starvation. We're not dealing with hunger in that traditional sense. You can eat until you're satisfied. But we do have to deal with hunger, because where hunger, okay, I see a comment. Please ask. I'll try to save time, but please ask, because I can't read while we're doing that. But anyway, think about the macronutrients in answer to that question: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So it's a low carbohydrate, high fat diet. By the way, another book that you might be interested in is called The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz, where she talks about the non-dangers of saturated fats. And we're not going to get into that because of the cholesterol issue, and it takes too much time, but that's something else. In any case, lost my train of thought, sorry. I help them with that. I also help them with hunger. And you know what? Hunger and cravings come from different sources. So we get hungry just because it's time to eat. When you hear your stomach growl, it doesn't mean your stomach is empty. It means food is going through your intestines. Let's reframe that. That's good. It means your intestines are moving, doing things. That's that gurgling. Some associate that gurgling with microbiome. That's another story too. But we get hungry because we smell, Auntie whatever her name's pretzels as we're walking through the mall or the airport, or Cinnabon. That, there's always room for Jell-O. There's always room for dessert. There's always room for sugar. And we eat so much, we eat so much processed food that we get more salt and sugar in our daily diet without even realizing it than any human should consume. So I help my clients deal with eating real food. I had one client, she's a terrible cook. She looked at me and she said, after 6 sessions, she looked at me and she said, but you don't understand. I'm the carbohydrate queen. And I looked at her and I said, so when are you going to abdicate? Because she was eating for dinner a bag of Oreo cookies and a quart of milk. That's not healthy, even if you're not insulin resistant. Even if you're not obese, that's not healthy. Especially if it's low fat milk, which is mostly sugar. It's just all sugar. So we give the liver time by creating to use what it's stored, to use what it's stored. And we eat food, reduced. I always tell my clients it's a reduced carbohydrate diet. I never say it's a no carbohydrate diet. That may be a decision some make, but that's not where we're going. It's a reduced carbohydrate diet. That reduction goes, and it's gradual. They're experiencing change. They're embracing change. They know this is permanent. The other promise that I make to them, in addition to you'll eat until you're satisfied, is You're not going to be pushed beyond anything that you're willing to do, but understand that you may be more willing to do more later than you are right now. And so we're going to be where we are right now, but know that it's possible to be more willing later. Let's just accept that. And so they embrace that. And then we take it one more step. You know, once, I don't know if you're familiar with the dieting check mark. I've heard a number of people talk about the dieting check mark, where you go down to a certain level and then you taper off what you were doing on the diet and your weight goes up a little bit. We set our goals, whether it's a weight goal or a diabetes goal, to the point where we would like to maintain it. And that's up to them. I've had clients who are completely satisfied remaining on their diabetes medications, but having their A1C under 6 or under, under 7. They want to, that's where they're comfortable. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to be like me. And maybe, since we're individuals, maybe everything is a little different. Maybe my body's a little different than yours, and we have to find out, number one. But I tell them, someday, this is the promise, someday you'll have wiggle room. You'll have more room to wiggle as we're getting more, I don't want to say restricted, but we're controlling our what we're consuming to a certain point. There comes a point where, yeah, there's a little bit of wiggle room. And the question is, if we do this properly, that we create a new normal, they want less wiggle room. They want it less, they use it less. We here in Pittsburgh, we have a tradition called a cookie table. At every graduation, every wedding, people make all of these beautiful homemade cookies, and there are plates. And before they serve the dinner, everybody goes and gets a plate. And it's always, oh, I'm gonna share this with my table. But everybody has a plate that they're sharing with the table. We're all eating a plate of cookies. Now, when I see a cookie table, do you know what I think? Instead of getting a plate, I literally think, which one do I want? Which one? And it's not, other people have plates at the table. I don't need that. Which one do I want? And I don't crave the carbohydrates. I don't crave bread. I don't crave pasta. I went through that, but we help them with that. So as hypnotists, if we understand the struggles they're facing, and let's face it, change is our business, right? It's not just about portion control. It's not about calories. It's about helping them find a harmonious, happy life where they are comfortable in their own skin. Understand that. And, a number of people, I'm doing a training, by the way, a full 2-day training. I'm not marketing it here because I don't know if that's appropriate or not. But a number of people who are attending that training, they keep asking, will there be scripts? Of course there will be scripts. What would a hypnosis training be without a script or two? But nobody should think, oh, script number 1 is this, script number 2 is this. Nobody's the same. This is a long process. It's not done in one. This is a long process, and we're developing a change, helping our clients cope with that change, managing that change, and they're finding their new normal and sustaining it long enough that their metabolism understands that. And once their metabolism understands that, which is why we don't cut calories. I'm concerned about the metabolism. We don't cut calories because that restricts the metabolism. But did you know, and how many of you hypnotists know, that there's a mental metabolism? That if I tell myself I'm starving and I keep suggesting that to my mind, I'm starving, I'm starving, I'm starving. You know what? If you're starving, eat something. Because if you tell yourself you're starving, you're putting your body into emergency conservation mode. You're telling your body not to burn those calories. I'm starving. No, you're not. You know, my husband used to say to me, you're starving yourself. I would be doing a fast. You're starving yourself. And I would look at him and say, there's enough fat on my body, I could make it 3 years. Now, that's not true. I mean, I don't know. I've lost 100 pounds. Still have a few more. I mean, I could go, but I'm happy. And so at 60, I have the same waist I had when I graduated high school. Hello. Not quite the same body, though, I have to admit. You know, the skin isn't as tight as it used to be, especially after being stretched out over all that flab. I don't remember what time we finished, Michael. How are we for time?
You're doing good. You've got until 2:20.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'm going to end up here because I want to have some time for questions. And there was one question in the chat. So let me see. What do you eat? How do you eat time-wise? Okay, very good. Thank you. And that was from Susan. Susan, I eat and Paula says she loves fruit. Don't we all, Paula? We'll talk about that in a second. I eat a very, very low, not completely no carbohydrate diet. I rarely have a carbohydrate like a grain or sugar. I just don't. But I do eat protein. My carbohydrates come from things like seeds and vegetables. So that's what I eat. I don't need the bread. You know, I don't even eat pizza. You could, the best part of pizza is not the bread, it's the topping. Make a casserole out of it and it's amazing. I mean, oh my gosh, it's amazing.
The cheese and all the meat.
The cheese, the sauce, the sauce, the pepperoni, just be careful with the sauce because there's a lot of hidden sugar. Oh, by the way, I want to give you something. If you want to do the research that I did, in my book, I have sort of a bibliography of YouTube videos that are very accessible. And I insist that my clients actually watch those videos as they read the book so that they are cognitively being prepared for what we're doing. They understand it cognitively. It's called cognitive buy-in. Thank you. The only other person I've ever heard use that phrase, cognitive buy-in, was Melissa Tiers. I adore her, and I love cognitive buy-in. So if you go there to that program guide, you can actually just, you know, scroll down and it'll say, I already have the book. I want to get that guide. You can click on there and you just click the link and watch the videos.
Okay, so one quick question. I know you're talking about like insulin resistance, but I just found out that like my stomach is one just big bleeding gastritis, one big bleeding ulcer. Does this address that as well?
You know what? A lot of the things, and it doesn't address it directly, but some of the things that we do talk about in hypnofasting is the microbiome and the problem of the digestion of seed oils, and these things come into play in the intestines. So taking care of that, it almost seems counterproductive. Nina Teicholz calls us barbarians at the gate, but the gates are falling. You know, even the standard medical practice is beginning to acknowledge the things that I'm saying here. And in terms of that, I'm a latecomer. So it's that information was all out there, and that's how I found it. And the one thing, though, I will say is that, gosh, the learning never ends. Science is always progressing. So it's important. Paula, I love fruit too. I had a grapefruit for my birthday instead of cake. The sugar in fruit is what we need to think about. And because of the fructose, which can only be processed by the liver, in a weight loss or diabetes control environment, what we really want to do is not tax our liver with the fructose. So instead of sugary fruit, we might eat a small handful of berries for that sweet. But I did no sugar a few years ago, and fruit got me through that. But fruit is something that I save for a special occasion. And if I'm going to have fruit, it's going to be in a limited quantity and for a special. I'm not saying don't eat it. I'd rather you eat fruit than cake, right? Because there's the fiber inside that fruit that mitigates. But Paula, did I answer your question? I hope you don't hate me for that answer. Yes, you can eat fruit, but not, understand what it is. Like when I had a vegetarian who wanted to do hypnofasting, and she was a vegan, and we had to talk about the macronutrients and say, okay, understand that you are eating more carbohydrates because the sources of your protein have them. It's just that. And so while we don't count calories, and we don't even count macros, we just do it sort of perceptually. But people who are vegetarian, or it's easier for vegetarians if they're lacto-ovo, because they could eat cheese and eggs. But if they're vegan, they do have to kind of count, because they have to know that with their protein, which they need, they are also getting carbohydrates. So, yeah, Rocky.
Joseph, amazing contribution. I'm so grateful that you brought the point of empowering people, empowering oneself, breaking from the learned helplessness, but
Right.
then facing the, very dangerous dilemma of self-experimentation versus agreeing to the medical program, which is, if you have hypertension, blood pressure, or
Right.
diabetes, they call this lifelong management, which means that you are committed to that. And then even if you are lucky with self-experimentation, then they will not change the diagnosis because it has legal connotation. Because if something happens later, they have to know why the diagnosis was changed. So I think that this is the trend of taking the power from the establishment, which goal is to retain customer, into our own management, happy life, comfortable with one skin. Thank you so much. This is so amazing.
Yeah, Rocky, I want you to know that I don't encourage any of my clients to do self-experimentation, except, they can test, because I encourage my diabetic clients to actually test their blood to know what foods raise their blood sugar the most. And I insist anybody with a diagnosis of any kind of metabolic disease that I'm in communication with their doctor, that they communicate with their doctor. I offer the physician my time, saying, look, I understand, they're engaging in this process, which includes a lowered carbohydrate diet. This may necessitate, according to your prescription, a change in medications. They have been advised not to change their medications without your approval, and that sort of thing. But there's also, I will admit, a sub-context, a sub-agenda, because part of my mission in life is to see hypnosis and hypnotherapy as a primary response to a condition. So when someone goes to the doctor and says, look, I feel so depressed, I want the doctor, this is my dream, someday the doctor says, I'll be happy to give you a prescription, but I'd like you to also go and see and then name a hypnotist, because, we're good with that. Stress, anxiety, I'm so nervous, I can't. Yeah, here's something that'll give you some relaxation, but go and see a hypnotist. My own doctor, on the day that he got the test that said I'm insulin sensitive, he said, "Can you give me your book?" Now I have to admit, I was dumbfounded. And I had been almost at the point of looking for a low-carb doctor. If he had not changed, I was ready to say, okay, I need to find somebody who understands this, because this guy isn't paying attention. Maybe I need a new doctor. And so I gave him my book. And we'll see. That was 2 months ago. We'll see in 4 more months what he says. But go ahead, Patricia. You have to unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. I just want to make a comment about something you said that really resonates with me. And you said that the science is always, I don't know the words you used, but evolving, it's changing.
Yes.
And I think in medicine, a lot of times, and a lot of people, when the phrase, the science is settled, is one of those that just makes my hair stand on end, because people that say that don't understand the basic tenet of science. And I think in medicine, a lot of times doctors and the way they're trained, and, they get into a mode where they think the medicine, which is science, is settled. Like when they say, well, you're going to have to, this is only going to be controllable, you'll never be able to whatever. And I'm sure a lot of us have heard these things and proved it wrong and wonder why do they keep saying it, decades later. So I just love what you said, because to me, it's about keeping an open mind and considering when somebody gives you an absolute, whether it's in medicine or anything else, to at least, take it for the respectful education that's giving it, but to still keep open enough to some other possibilities. And to do more research like you did. And I just love everything you've said. I want to get your book.
Well, the link, I'm not marketing the book, but anyway, Kenny has a question.
Hi, thanks, Joseph. Thanks. This has been very intriguing and informative. I'm curious if you could help me get past the secondary gain, maybe a client or a patient who has a chronic condition and has been getting the attention and special care from a spouse who's used to taking care of that person in that particular way. And as that person begins to change, they lose that secondary gain and may want to go back to getting that attention. How do we deal with that?
And I'm an unusual hypnotist. Like when I'm working with couples or I'm working with a person, I sometimes say, please bring your husband. Or, but the thing is what they get, whatever they get. And let's be honest, subconsciously, they get things. Everybody gets, like smokers get something out of smoking, even though consciously they know it's detrimental, they get something out of it. So I've never really had a lot of secondary gain issues with my clients. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to present itself as often. But if I were to suspect that, particularly in hypnofasting, the idea is, okay, this is something that's going to affect everybody, and we need to get the support of your husband, or we need to get the support of your family. And it's not you alone doing this. And so soliciting that support in a different way, it's not, if secondary gain is like Munchausen's, oh, I feel sorry for her, or I feel sorry for him, then that's a problem. But can we replace it with, I'm partnering with them for this health. I'm now part of this process. My husband now after 2 years is looking at me, because now he's the fat one, he'll tell you. And he'll say to me, okay, so is this okay to eat? And, I just,
you guys are like this.
Yeah, it's like, all right, sure. You want that. You're not diabetic. It's okay. And I don't want to go over time. It's 21 after. Jan has one more question. Jan.
No, a comment. I'm enjoying it a lot because my sister-in-law weighed over 200 and was diagnosed with diabetes. So she went on this very program
Beautiful.
and shed 70 pounds. She's working to shed some more. And she swims and she exercises and she's always posting foods that she's found that work. And she
Yeah.
has a little community on Facebook that, they share, and I'm in there. But so there's another
Beautiful.
testimony for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. We exercise, by the way, not to burn calories, but to have fun and move, to use our muscles, yes, but to have fun and move. So in Hypnofasting, we call it activity and movement.
Great.
Anyway.
Well, Joseph, how lovely, and yeah, I'm sorry we have come to the end of the time, but Joseph, open your microphone for a second, because you've apologized a couple of times for marketing or not marketing or whatever it is. Our only issue about that is that we want to make sure that when people present to us, it isn't just a commercial for something.
Right.
On the other hand, I certainly don't want you to stop letting people know how they can get a hold of your material. So how do they get your book?
Okay, so I posted a link, hypnofastingsolution.com program dash guide. If you go right to that website or click on the program guide link, you can buy that guide. You can also contact me. My email, I'll type it in here. It's easy. It's joseph.onesta@gmail.com. Oh, and somehow it's going privately to, I don't know.
Joseph, we have you at yahoo.com.
Yeah, that's the one I use for scammers now. But
Okay.
that was an old one. Michael, we've known each other for a long time. When that was my email, I was using it. I was using it, but now it's exclusively the one I use for scammers.
So that's why you gave it to me then.
No, you weren't a scammer. Back then, way back then, that was my email address before Gmail. So yeah, feel free. And if you can make if you're going to go to Hypnothoughts, stay a couple of extra days and take the 2-day training. You can include this, then you'll get a lot of after that support, and it's dead cheap this year, by the way. But without marketing it, just stay. It's 2 days. It's going to be a great 2 days. And you'll learn everything you know to incorporate this into your practice and help. Just imagine being able to say to people, oh, you're a type 2 diabetic. Do you know that you actually can control that? Perhaps even reverse it?
Yeah.
And I like the word perhaps, because I can't make that promise, right?
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen, but you can control it. I adore you, and I adore my Hypno tribe. You're all Hypno buddies to me now.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us, Joseph. We really, really appreciate it, everybody. A round of inaudible applause, I'm afraid, but there they are. So thanks again, Joseph, from the bottom of our hearts to the bottom of yours. And we'll hope to see you around again. We're still out here, so thanks a lot. Oh, all right. Well, what a lovely thing. I love the Hypnosis Education Association. This is just fantastic. We're having a great day. We do need to get a break, so we're going to take 10 minutes. We're just a little bit off schedule, but we will be able to adjust that before the end of the day, so don't worry about it. Just wander around just a little bit, get out of your chair and move, and we'll be back here in 10 minutes to hear from Dr. Paula.